They mocked her, a tall, scarred Vorak warrior, for daring to dream of love. No one believed she could find it amid the trenches of war, until a human caught her hand, and all prejudices crumbled. The laughter echoed through the Vorak council chamber, cold and derisive as the steel that lined the walls. Syrixa stood rigid, her copper-toned skin gleaming under the dim lights that reflected off the gray armor surrounding her. "Emotions are strength," she had declared, and the council had erupted in mockery. They told her she was a dreamer. They said love was for the weak. Yet when a human took her hand, the entire galaxy would stand in awe. Eridus, the political military center of the Vorak race, spun slowly beneath the massive warship Bloodhammer. Inside its command deck, the periodic war council convened in a chamber of cold metal and harsher judgment. The distant future had seen humanity establish colonies on far-flung planets. But it had also seen the rise of the Vorak, a culture built on strength, conquest, and the absolute rejection of emotion. To them, love was a mental illness, a weakness that could not be tolerated. The Vorak society demanded iron discipline. Warriors wore battle scars like badges of honor, never displaying any softness. Among them stood Syrixa, nearly 8 feet tall. Her dark copper skin marked with scars that crawled across her shoulders and arms, trophies from dozens of campaigns. But behind her deep blue eyes lurked a hidden longing. Since childhood, she had wondered at the twilight over the Eridus marshlands, questioning if there existed something the Vorak did not understand, something called love. "Your proposal to study humans through emotional negotiation rather than just using force is not just foolish. It's treasonous," Commander Thrawn snarled, his voice cutting through the council chamber. "You've lost all Vorak dignity." His pale gray face twisted in disgust as he stared down at Syrixa from the elevated council platform. The council audience watched with varied expressions. Commander Thrawn with his extremist views on using force, General Vorax with his open contempt, and aging General Corrin with a hint of ancestral compassion still burning in his eyes. These three represented the spectrum of Vorak thought: Thrawn's violent extremism, Vorax's contemptuous traditionalism, and Corrin's guarded empathy. "The Council's decision is final," Thrawn announced, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "Syrixa will lead the Vorak intelligence unit to the human colony ship, Aurora Dawn. You will study their weaknesses and prepare them for subjugation. But let me be clear," his voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Show any emotion, and you'll lose your rank." Syrixa's jaw tightened, but she maintained the steel composure expected of her kind. The meeting dispersed, leaving her alone with her thoughts in the cold chamber. A single figure approached, Sergeant Kalux, a member of her escort team who had followed her through many campaigns. "They don't understand what you're trying to do," Kalux said quietly, glancing around to ensure they weren't overheard. "But I think you're just testing a new idea." Syrixa looked at her subordinate, surprised by this rare show of support. "Is it weakness to seek understanding before violence?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Not weakness," Kalux replied. "Perhaps the greatest strength of all." As they prepared for departure, Syrixa faced her reflection in the polished metal of her quarters. The scars that crossed her copper skin told stories of victories, but also of pain. She wondered if her parents, her lineage, had been right to scorn what she secretly sought. Was she truly betraying the warrior's path by questioning their relentless conquest? The journey to the human colony vessel would be the true test. Either she would prove that understanding emotions could be a tactical advantage, or she would confirm what every Vorak believed, that feelings were the path to defeat. The massive Vorak warship Bloodhammer approached the human vessel, Aurora Dawn, connecting via a space bridge that stretched between the two ships like a fragile lifeline. As they crossed, Sarixa gazed out at the remnants of planets the Vorak had conquered. The debris fields that had once been thriving worlds now served as grim monuments to Vorak might. Once, she had taken pride in these conquests. But now, the ruins reminded her of something troubling: the merciless nature of her people. The space bridge itself, a temporary structure of energy and matter that connected the two vastly different vessels, seemed to symbolize something greater to Sarixa, a tenuous emotional bridge between Vorak and humans, between conquest and connection. When they boarded the Aurora Dawn, Sarixa immediately noticed the difference. Instead of the harsh, angular designs of Vorak architecture, the human ship featured curved corridors and a pale violet light that emanated from the control panels. It felt almost hopeful, a stark contrast to the oil-scented, weapon-laden environment she called home. "Welcome to Aurora Dawn," came a calm voice as a human approached the Vorak delegation. "I'm Darian Hale, chief xenobiologist of the Tharsis colony." Sarixa studied him carefully. Standing at about 6 feet tall, with brown hair streaked with silver, his face carried a tranquility that seemed foreign to her world of constant alertness. What struck her most wasn't that he didn't draw a weapon upon seeing her. It was the way his eyes lingered on the scars that marked her arms, not with disgust or fear, but with curiosity. "You're the one who defeated us," he said simply. The Vorak warriors behind Sarixa tensed, expecting her to assert dominance over this bold human. Instead, she found herself caught off guard by his directness. "I'm just a soldier," she replied, the unfamiliar sensation of uncertainty creeping into her voice. "The battlefield is not a place I chose." Darian's eyebrows raised slightly, as though her answer surprised him. "Few of us choose our battlefields," he said, "but we all choose how we fight on them." He led the Vorak delegation through the ship to a laboratory filled with drought-resistant plant cells, being cultivated for the harsh Tharsis environment. The planet Tharsis itself could be seen through a viewport. Fields of hydroponic crops, interspersed with solar energy columns. Transparent domes reflecting the reddish sky colored by the desert sands. The humans here were smaller than the Vorak, their faces gentler, but their eyes burned with a determination to rebuild from the ashes of their war with the Vorak. Sarixa felt strangely moved by their resilience, a thought she quickly buried beneath her warrior's discipline. As Darian explained the purpose of each cultivation chamber, Sarixa found herself drawn to his words. "Plants can feel pain when they lack water," he explained, gently touching a seedling. "They respond when someone cares for them." Such simple statements, yet they reached something deep within the Vorak warrior. That evening, as her team settled into their assigned quarters on the Aurora Dawn, Drex, one of the warriors sent by General Vorax, sneered at Sarixa. "Asking for human fruit juice to experience their sensation?" he mocked. "You're going soft, Commander." Sarixa kept her expression neutral, though inside she questioned whether she was indeed losing her pure warrior nature. Later, Sergeant Kalux approached her in the corridor. "Listen to your heart," he whispered, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "But be careful. Some of the others are recording your meetings with the human." The warning came too late. By morning, rumors had spread through the Vorak communication channels that Sarixa was romanticizing with the enemy. That night, Sarixa dreamed not of battlefields, but of a home that wasn't a war hell, but a growing garden, a symbol of love and life she had never experienced. She woke to find a message from Darian, inviting her to view a new cultivation project. Against her better judgment, she accepted. In the empty experimental courtyard outside the glass plant rooms, Darian had set up a small portable shelter. Inside were drawings of artificial forest ecology, a project designed to help the notoriously barren Vorak worlds incorporate nature into their environments. "I thought perhaps," Darian said hesitantly, "we could design a model together, something that might help both our peoples, Together, they sketched the first design, Vorak walls becoming hanging gardens, watchtowers featuring windows to view the sunrise. Each stroke of the pen made Sarixa's heart tremble in a way she had never experienced. She realized that emotion wasn't the enemy. It was a different kind of strength. Their peaceful collaboration was shattered when Drex burst into the shelter, accompanied by two other Vorak warriors. He snatched the drawings from the table. "Treason!" he spat. "Collaborating with humans on designs for our fortresses." Darien stepped forward, drawing a small pistol from his coat. "This is not hostile activity," he said firmly. "This is the future." A scuffle ensued. Darien received a minor injury to his arm, while Sarixa used her larger frame to restrain Drex. "This is not what you think," she insisted. "This is research, as we were ordered to do." Back on the Bloodhammer, the Vorak High Command was in uproar. Images of Sarixa, standing in intimate conversation with Darien, had been broadcast across Vorak media channels through Drex's hidden camera. The Vorak community was outraged, declaring she had lost all honor. Commander Thran sent a message demanding Sarixa return to Eridus to answer for treason. General Vorax issued an order to strip her of rank if she refused to return. Sarixa appeared on the Eridus news broadcast via holocom, attempting to explain, "I'm researching recovery, finding ways to prevent war between Vorak and humans. Why can't we try to understand them?" Thran and Vorax publicly opposed her. "Love is a base instinct. You're losing your warrior culture." Many Vorak commented. "She's a deserter." Returning to her rest chamber on the Aurora Dawn, Sarixa examined her scars and questioned herself. "Am I being arrogant? Has my heart been enchanted by humans?" She searched through the collection of mementos her parents had given her when she joined the military, remembering their warnings that Vorak do not belong to the soft, weak world. A moment of great doubt overtook her. She wondered, "Am I a traitor?" and experienced a nightmare where her armor shattered, revealing her scarred flesh bleeding, a symbol of the pain of lost faith. Meanwhile, Darien sought her out again. Administrator Nakamura of the Tharsis colony had sent a secret message to the Aurora Dawn. "If you stay on Tharsis, beware becoming a political target for your divergent ideas." This placed Sarixa in the midst of a tug-of-war between genuine feeling and Vorak duty. Lieutenant Mara, a fellow warrior with a slight inclination toward compassion, secretly sent Sarixa a letter advising her not to get too close to Darien. The pressure mounted. Rumors and accusations spread. Sarixa's loyalty was questioned by both her people and herself. But something inside her had changed. She had glimpsed a different kind of existence, one where strength and emotion weren't enemies, but allies. In the darkness of night, Sarixa made her way to the space bridge control room, intending to withdraw from the Aurora Dawn and return to Eridus to face charges. She was ready to sacrifice herself, but Darien intercepted her. "If you go back, they'll kill you or turn you into a ship captain on the frontier, living in solitude," he warned. "I have no choice," Sarixa replied, her voice heavy with resignation. "My people have spoken." Darien stepped closer, his eyes determined. "I choose to stand with you," he declared. He pressed a button, opening all transmission channels on the holocom system to broadcast a prepared speech. On Vorak television appeared the news. Darien Hale, chief strategist of the human colony, officially applies for cultural asylum in Vorak society to protect a Vorak warrior. The reaction from both sides was explosive. On Eridus, the Vorak Council erupted in fury. Commander Thran demanded the launch of interceptor engines. General Vorak shouted, "We must eliminate that human!" On Tharsis, shockwaves spread. Humans debated Darien's decision, some supporting his courage to choose love, others suspicious that this might just be a political ploy. On the holocom screen, bathed in fiery red light, like a symbolic revolution, Syrixa and Darian's hands clasped before the cameras, a beacon of hope in the blackness of space. Syrixa faced her internal conflict at its peak. She stepped out of her comfort zone, laying down her laser rifle and exposing all her scars to the audience. "I am not ashamed," she declared. "I have killed hundreds of enemies, but now I choose love over blood." The immediate consequences rippled across both worlds. The Vorak warship Bloodhammer, prepared to launch, ordered to destroy the Tharsis vessel as a warning to humans. But General Korin, with his established authority, unexpectedly spoke up. "I've marched across countless worlds. Some conquer by force, but sometimes victory comes from the heart." He demanded a vote for a dual alliance. Darian's proposal to establish a Vorak-human cooperation station. The result: sufficient two-thirds vote to reject the destruction order. However, Syrixa was officially stripped of her rank, charged with denying her warrior heritage. On Tharsis, Administrator Nakamura welcomed Darian as the new cultural bridge. He was given the position of Cultural Exchange Ambassador. His mission: to develop joint projects between the two species. But simultaneously, he was criticized by some Tharsis residents as bringing the enemy into the bird's nest. Syrixa was brought aboard the Aurora Dawn, forbidden from returning to Eridus. However, General Korin protected her. "You are no longer our Vorak, but we find in you something my generation has never seen: the courage to question identity." Instead of imprisonment, they made her head designer of the peace station, using her warrior experience blended with Darian's architectural skills. Syrixa and Darian exchanged ideas, sitting at the drawing table, drafting the peace station blueprint: Vorak fortress walls encased in pressure-resistant glass, housing budding Tharsis gardens inside, a symbol of harmony. The pacing at the beginning of the falling action was slow, focusing on emotions, each heartbeat, the sweat rolling down Syrixa's forehead as she sketched. Darian meticulously added shades of pale green. A small conflict arose when the Vorak 3D printer malfunctioned, because the software was designed only for underground war bunkers. Syrixa, with her battlefield experience, tinkered to modify it to print impact-resistant shields that still allowed open space for vegetation. This symbolized steel plates manufactured for Vorak gunwells, now becoming frames for climbing plants, a metaphor for turning weapons into tools of life. The inauguration of the Peace Station, Joint Peace Station, was magnificently detailed. The station floated in Tharsis' atmosphere, featuring 2 square Vorak towers alongside 2 human glass domes. In the main courtyard, 2 flags, Vorak and human, fluttered side by side. General Korin declared, "Today, we do not swear oaths to each other with blood, but inscribe treaties with stone and feeling. The peace station will prove that true strength is not just weapons, but connection." Syrixa and Darian officially announced their relationship. During the ceremony, Darian took Syrixa's hand, took the microphone, and said, "This planet may be small compared to the Milky Way, but our love will be greater than any barrier." Hundreds of Vorak armors and human shirts applauded. They had witnessed the moment a human melted a warrior's ice, a final plot twist that made the audience overflow with emotion. Thran and Vorax were extremely dissatisfied, demanding revenge. But General Korin used his prestige to force them to withdraw their lawsuit against Syrixa from the military court. Vorax publicly apologized, but wariness remained in his eyes. Thran retreated silently, but kept a heart scar. "I won't forget you once said, 'Love is strength.'" Syrixa reflected, "I have conquered fear, self-doubt." She and Darian entered the station, where the first green plants began growing in zero-gravity containers, heralding a new ecological season. In the final piece, Syrixa looked up at the pink Tharsis sky and smiled. "If they once laughed at me for dreaming, now I live in that dream." Sarixa, the Eastern Dome has a structural issue with the soil acidity. Sarixa's reverie at the observation window was broken by Darian's voice, echoing through the peace station's comm system. She smiled, touching the largest scar on her forearm, a reminder of the Battle of Proxima Centauri, where she'd earned her first command position. How different her life had become in just a few months. "On my way," she replied, her deep voice softer than it had been during her warrior days. The corridors of the peace station still bore the architectural hallmarks of Vorak design, angular, efficient, imposing. But now living vines crept along specialized channels in the walls, bringing life to what had once been sterile metal. She passed several human workers who nodded respectfully. Some still feared her imposing 8-foot frame and battle-hardened appearance, but most had come to respect the former commander who had risked everything for peace. A young Vorak engineer, one of the few who had defected after her example, saluted as she passed. The old ways died hard. The Eastern Dome was the newest addition to the peace station, a massive glass hemisphere filled with experimental crops designed to thrive in Tharsus's unique atmospheric conditions. Darian stood in the center. Soil samples spread across a portable analysis table, his brow furrowed in concentration. "The acidity levels are spiking again," he said without looking up as Sarixa entered. "We've tried buffering the soil with calcium carbonate, but something in the Tharsus dust is counteracting it." Sarixa moved beside him, towering over his frame, and studied the readings. "When I was stationed on Nerithia Prime, we encountered similar problems with the native soil. The solution came not from fighting the acidity, but adapting to it." She pointed to a separate readout. "What if we genetically modify these strains to thrive in acidic conditions, rather than trying to neutralize the environment?" Darian looked up at her, a slow smile spreading across his face. "That's brilliant. Fighting versus adapting. It always comes back to that with us, doesn't it?" Sarixa's blue eyes softened as she met his gaze. "Some battles cannot be won through force. It took me 8 decades of warfare to learn that simple truth." Their moment was interrupted by a chime from the communication panel. "Incoming transmission from Aritis High Command," announced the automated system. Sarixa straightened, her warrior's instincts immediately on alert. Communications from Aritis were rare and never without purpose. "Put it through," she commanded. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the stern visage of General Corin. His gray face seemed to have aged further in the months since the establishment of the peace station, the lines around his eyes deeper, more pronounced. "Sarixa," he acknowledged with a nod. "Ambassador Hale." "General," they replied in unison. "I bring news that concerns you both. The Vorak High Council has voted on the status of the Peace Station Initiative." He paused, his expression unreadable. Despite opposition from Commander Thrawn and his supporters, the Council has approved expanded diplomatic relations with Tharsus Colony. 5 more cultural exchange officers will be dispatched to the Peace Station within the month. Sarixa felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. "Thank you for informing us, General. This is significant progress." A ghost of a smile touched Corin's lips. "Indeed, there is more. The Council has also reviewed your status, Sarixa." She tensed again. Her official designation since her defection had been cultural aberrant, stripped of rank and military honors. "While your formal rank cannot be restored under Vorak law, you have been granted the civilian title of Cultural Pioneer. It carries no military authority, but acknowledges your contribution." Darian's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "That's wonderful news, General. Thank you." Corin's eyes flickered to their clasped hands, something unidentifiable crossing his features. "I should note that this decision was not unanimous. Commander Thrawn remains unconvinced of the value of emotional connection." "And you, General?" Sarixa asked quietly. What do you believe? The old warrior was silent for a long moment. I have seen too much death in my lifetime. Sarixa, if there is another path, even one as strange as this, I would be a fool not to consider it. He straightened. That is all. Aretas out. The hologram faded, leaving Sarixa and Darian alone among the experimental plants. Cultural pioneer, Darian repeated with a soft laugh. It's a start. More than I expected, Sarixa admitted. The Vorak do not change easily. Neither do humans, Darian replied, turning back to the soil samples. Speaking of which, we should inform Administrator Nakamura about these new diplomatic developments, and about our solution to the soil acidity problem. Sarixa nodded, but her mind was elsewhere, contemplating the implications of Corin's message. The peace station had been conceived as an experiment, a small bridge between two vastly different species. Now it seemed it might become something more. The next morning, Sarixa awoke before Tharsus's red sun had crested the horizon. She slipped quietly from the quarters she shared with Darian, making her way to the training facility she had insisted be included in the peace station's design. Old habits died hard, and the discipline of physical training remained important to her, even if her days as a warrior were behind her. As she moved through the combat forms that had been drilled into her since childhood, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The jeers of her fellow warriors when she had first suggested understanding humans through emotion. The shock on Darian's face when she had admitted her growing feelings for him. The terror of standing before the holocom, renouncing her warrior's oath for something the Vorak had always considered weakness. Your form is still perfect, came a voice from the doorway. Sarixa turned to see Lieutenant Mara. No, she corrected herself. Ambassador Mara now, watching her with appraising eyes. Old training dies hard, Sarixa replied, lowering her arms from the fighting stance. Mara stepped into the room, her own tall frame moving with the predatory grace of a Vorak warrior. She was one of the 5 new cultural officers General Corin had mentioned, though Sarixa hadn't expected her to arrive so quickly. The others talk about you constantly on Aretas, Mara said, circling Sarixa as if they were about to spar. Some call you traitor, others visionary. The younger warriors especially. They ask questions that would have been unthinkable before you defected. And what do you call me? Sarixa asked, tracking Mara's movement. I haven't decided yet, Mara admitted. That's why I requested this assignment. I needed to see for myself what could make a decorated commander abandon everything she had worked for. Sarixa gestured around them. And what do you see? A contradiction, Mara replied immediately. You train like a warrior, but live like a... She searched for the word. Diplomat. You wear no armor, but still bear the scars of battle proudly. You have renounced violence, yet maintain the disciplines that made you a formidable weapon. She stopped her circling, facing Sarixa directly. You confuse me. I confused myself for a long time, Sarixa said with a small smile. Perhaps that is the beginning of growth. Mara frowned. Vorak do not grow. We conquer. And what has that conquest brought us? Dozens of dead worlds. Endless resources spent on weapons. Generations of warriors trained only to kill and die. Sarixa stepped closer to Mara. Ask yourself, Lieutenant, when was the last time you felt purpose beyond the next battle? Something flickered in Mara's eyes. Uncertainty. Perhaps. Purpose is not a warrior's concern. It should be everyone's concern, came Darian's voice as he entered the training room. Otherwise, what are we fighting for? Mara tensed at the human's arrival, her hand instinctively moving toward a weapon she no longer carried within the peace station. Ambassador Hale, she acknowledged stiffly. Ambassador Mara, he replied with a nod. I hope your quarters are comfortable. We've tried to incorporate elements of Vorak design while adapting to the environmental needs of the station. They are adequate, Mara replied, clearly uncomfortable with the casual conversation. Perhaps you'd like a tour of the agricultural facilities, Darian suggested. The integration of Vorak engineering with human botanical science has yielded some remarkable results. Mara looked to Sarixa, as if seeking permission or guidance. Go, Sarixa encouraged. See what we're building here. Then decide what you call me. After Mara had followed Darian from the training room, Sarixa returned to her exercises. But her mind remained on the conversation. Mara's confusion mirrored what she herself had felt not so long ago. The disorientation of questioning everything one had been taught to believe. Later that day, as Tharsis's red sun cast long shadows across the peace station, Sarixa found herself in the central garden dome, a space that perfectly captured the fusion of Vorak and human design philosophies. The structural supports were pure Vorak, angular, efficient, immensely strong, while the layout of the gardens themselves reflected human aesthetics, with curved pathways and seemingly random arrangements that somehow created a harmonious whole. She was examining a newly installed irrigation system when Sergeant Kalux approached. Unlike Mara, Kalux had abandoned his Vorak military uniform, instead wearing the practical jumpsuits favored by the station's engineering team. The new atmospheric processors are online, he reported. Oxygen levels are now optimal throughout the Eastern Dome. Thank you, Kalux, Sarixa replied. How are you finding civilian life? The former sergeant considered the question seriously. Different, quieter. I do not miss the constant drills or the battle sirens, but I miss the clarity sometimes, the certainty of knowing my place and purpose. Sarixa nodded in understanding. We were taught that certainty was strength, but I've come to believe that certainty can also be a prison. Questions, doubts, even confusion. These can lead to discovery. Like your discovery of... Kalux hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the concept. Love. Yes, Sarixa said simply, though I would not have called it that at first. It began as curiosity, then respect, then something I had no name for. The Vorak language has no word for what I felt, what I feel. Yet you knew it was worth sacrificing everything for, Kalux observed. Sarixa gazed across the garden to where Darian was showing Mara a specimen of modified Tharsis cactus that had been crossbred with an aridus thorn vine. I didn't know, she admitted. I only knew that returning to what I was had become impossible. Kalux followed her gaze. The others will struggle as Mara does. We are not taught to adapt, only to conquer or die. Then perhaps that is what we must teach them first, Sarixa suggested. That adaptation is not surrender. It is a different kind of strength. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent alert from the station's communication system. Emergency transmission from Tharsis Colony, announced the automated voice. Priority Alpha. Sarixa and Kalux rushed to the command center, arriving just as Darian and Mara entered from another corridor. The main screen displayed the concerned face of Administrator Nakamura. We've detected a Vorak warship entering the Tharsis system, Nakamura reported without preamble. Not scheduled, not responding to hails. Mara stepped forward. Configuration, markings? Hunter-class destroyer, Nakamura replied. Designation Ironwill. Mara's expression darkened. Commander Thrawn's personal vessel. Sarixa felt cold dread settle in her stomach. How long until they reach Tharsis orbit? Less than 2 hours at current velocity, Nakamura answered. Colony defenses are on alert, but if they're coming in with hostile intent, they would overwhelm your defenses within minutes, Sarixa finished grimly. This station even faster. Darian moved to Sarixa's side. Why now? After Corrin's message about expanded diplomatic relations? Perhaps because of it, Mara suggested. Thran has always been opposed to any cooperation with humans. If he believes the Council is moving too far in that direction, he might take matters into his own hands, Kalux concluded. A rogue action to prove the futility of peace. Sarixa straightened to her full height. her warrior's mind already calculating options, strategies, escape routes. Administrator, evacuate all non-essential personnel from the station immediately. Direct them to the colony's underground shelters. And the essential personnel? Nakamura asked. Sarixa looked to Darien, who nodded in understanding and support. We stay, she declared. This station represents everything Thrawn despises. If he wants to destroy it, he'll have to face those who built it. After Nakamura's transmission ended, Sarixa turned to the others. Mara, you're the only one here with current knowledge of Vorak tactical protocols. What would Thrawn's approach be? The lieutenant considered direct, overwhelming. He doesn't believe in subtlety. He'll position for a clear firing solution on the station, issue demands, and when they're not met, open fire with all primary weapons. Then we need to make sure his demands are met, Darien suggested. Sarixa shook her head. His only demand will be the station's destruction and our surrender, particularly mine. He wants to make an example of me. Then we fight, Kaluk said, the old warrior's fire returning to his eyes. No, Sarixa replied firmly. That's exactly what Thrawn wants, to prove that peace is impossible, that conflict is inevitable between our species. Then, what do you suggest? Mara asked, skepticism clear in her voice. Sarixa was silent for a moment. Then a slow, dangerous smile spread across her face, the expression her enemies had learned to fear on the battlefield. Communication, on a scale Thrawn cannot ignore. For the next hour, the station was a flurry of activity. Most of the staff evacuated to Tharsis colony, as ordered, leaving only Sarixa, Darien, Kalux, Mara, and a handful of technical specialists who insisted on staying. The modifications to the communication array are complete, reported one of the human technicians. We've boosted the signal strength by 300%. If they broadcast, every communication device on Tharsis and in orbit will receive it. And the visual feed from the central dome? Sarixa asked. Multiple camera angles, all high definition. It'll be quite a show. Darien approached Sarixa as the others prepared. Are you sure about this? Thrawn isn't known for his reasonableness. No, she agreed. He's known for his absolutism, his belief that the Vorak way is the only way. That's what we need to challenge. And if he simply opens fire without listening? Sarixa took Darien's hand, her massive fingers dwarfing his. Then we will have tried, and our attempt will be recorded for both our peoples to witness. The station's sensors detected the Iron Will entering orbit precisely when predicted. The sleek, predatory shape of the Vorak destroyer took position directly above the peace station, its weapon systems visibly powering up. Incoming transmission, announced the station system. Put it through, Sarixa commanded, standing tall in the central garden dome, exactly where they had planned. The holographic projection materialized, showing Commander Thrawn's cold, contemptuous face. Traitor, he greeted Sarixa. I see you've surrounded yourself with more traitors and weaklings. Commander Thrawn, Sarixa replied calmly. This is an unscheduled visit to a diplomatic installation. State your purpose. Thrawn's laugh was harsh. Diplomatic. You've created an abomination, a monument to weakness that infects our warriors with human sentimentality. My purpose is to erase that infection. His eyes narrowed. Surrender yourself to Vorak justice, and perhaps the humans will be permitted to evacuate before I reduce this station to atoms. You speak of Vorak justice, Sarixa said, her voice carrying throughout the dome and, through the enhanced communication array, to every receiver on Tharsis and in orbit. But you act without Council authorization. General Corrin himself informed me of the Council's decision to expand diplomatic relations. Corrin is old and weak, Thrawn spat. As are all who believe cooperation serves the Vorak better than conquest. Is strength only measured in destruction, then? Sarixa challenged. She gestured around her at the garden dome, where Vorak engineering and human botanical science had created something neither could have achieved alone. Look at what we've built here. Thran. Not destroyed. Built. Irrelevant sentimentality. Thran dismissed. You have 10 minutes to surrender, or I open fire. The transmission cut off abruptly. Well, that went about as expected, Darian observed dryly. It wasn't Thran I was trying to convince, Sarixa replied. She turned to Mara, who had witnessed the exchange with an unreadable expression. Lieutenant, you have a choice to make. Now. Mara's eyes widened slightly in understanding. She glanced at the communication console, then back to Sarixa. You knew this would happen. You've been planning for it. I've known Thrawn for decades, Sarixa confirmed. His hatred of change, his fear of anything that challenges Vorak supremacy. I knew he wouldn't accept the Council's decision without a fight. And you need me to contact the Council directly, Mara realized. To report his unauthorized action. Yes, as a current officer of the Vorak military, your communication will receive priority routing that mine would not. Mara hesitated, visibly torn between her duty to the Vorak chain of command and her instinctive loyalty to a superior officer like Thran. Thran believes strength comes only from destruction, Kalux said quietly. What do you believe, Lieutenant? The question hung in the air for long seconds before Mara straightened her posture. I believe in Vorak honor, and there is no honor in destroying the defenseless without Council authorization. She moved to the communication console. I'll make the call. As Mara established a direct channel to the Vorak Council on Aridus, Sarixa turned to the human technicians. Prepare for broadcast on my signal. Maximum distribution. Darian moved to her side. What are you planning? A demonstration, Sarixa replied, of a different kind of strength. 8 minutes later, with Thran's deadline approaching, Sarixa stood alone in the center of the garden dome. The cameras were positioned, the communication array ready. She had removed her outer garments, standing only in the simple undergarment that left her arms and much of her torso exposed, revealing the full extent of her battle scars for all to see. Begin broadcast, she commanded. The station's systems confirmed that her image was being transmitted to every communication device on Tharsis and in orbit, including the Iron Will. I am Sarixa, she began, her deep voice steady. Once commander of the Vorak 7th Legion, now called traitor by some, cultural pioneer by others. These scars I bear were earned in service to the Vorak, at Proxima Centauri, at the siege of New Europa, at the Battle of the Crimson Belt. I have killed more enemies than I can count. I have led warriors to victory and to death. She paused, letting the viewers take in the visual evidence of her combat history, the network of scars that crossed her copper skin. I was raised, as all Vorak are raised, to believe that strength comes only through dominance, that emotion is weakness, that to feel is to fail. She took a deep breath. I was wrong. We were wrong. The garden around her seemed to emphasize her words. Life, flourishing where once there would have been only sterile metal. True strength is not the absence of feeling, but the courage to feel despite fear. It is not the destruction of the different, but the wisdom to learn from difference. It is not conquest, but connection. She gestured to the plants surrounding her. These grow because Vorak engineering provides the structure, while human botanical science provides the knowledge. Neither alone could create this. Together, we have built something new. Her gaze turned upward, toward where the Iron Will orbited. Commander Thrawn believes this station is an infection that weakens the Vorak. I say it is an evolution that strengthens us, not by replacing who we are, but by expanding what we can become. A soft chime from the communication console indicated an incoming transmission. Kalux checked the source and nodded to Sarixa. The Council, he mouthed silently. Sarixa continued, knowing her time was short. If Thrawn destroys this station, he destroys the future, not just for humans, but for Vorak as well. A future where we might be more than conquerors, where we might create rather than merely destroy. She spread her arms wide, fully displaying the scars of her warrior past. I do not regret my service. I do not deny my nature. But I choose to grow beyond the limitations of what I was taught to be. I choose connection over conquest, understanding over domination. Her voice softened. Love over fear. The incoming transmission chime became more insistent. Syrixa nodded to Kalux, who accepted the connection, routing it through the same broadcast system. The stern face of General Corin appeared, his eyes widening slightly at the sight of Syrixa, standing exposed in the garden dome. "Commander Thran," he barked, clearly addressing not just the station but the Iron Will as well. "Stand down immediately. Your actions are unauthorized and in direct violation of Council directives." A moment later, Thran's face appeared in a split screen with Corin's. "General, this installation threatens Vorak purity. It promotes weakness among our warriors. I am acting to protect our way of life." "By disobeying direct orders?" Corin countered. "By threatening an unarmed diplomatic station. That is not the Vorak way. Commander." "With respect, General, you are wrong. The Vorak way is strength, dominance. These concepts of cooperation and cultural exchange weaken us." Corin's expression hardened. "The Council has voted. Commander, the Peace Station initiative will continue and expand. Your options are to comply or to resign your commission." Fury twisted Thran's features. "I will not stand by while our culture is corrupted by human sentimentality." "Then you stand alone," Corin declared. "The Council has spoken. The Vigilant and Stormbreaker have been dispatched to your location with orders to escort you back to Eridus. They will arrive within the hour." Thran's expression froze, the reality of his situation clearly dawning on him. He had gambled that his action would force the Council to support him, to choose Vorak tradition over this new path. He had lost. "This isn't over," he said at last, his voice cold with hatred as his gaze fixed on Syrixa. "The true Vorak will never accept this perversion of our nature." "Perhaps not," Syrixa conceded. "But they will have the opportunity to choose, as I did, as you did." The transmission from the Iron Will cut off abruptly. Moments later, the station's sensors reported the destroyer breaking orbit, moving away from Tharsis at maximum acceleration. "He's running," Kalux observed, refusing to face the consequences. "He believes he's preserving the true Vorak way," Syrixa corrected. "In his mind, he's a revolutionary, not a criminal." Corin's transmission remained active. "An apt assessment," the general acknowledged. "Thran has supporters, both in the military and among the civilian population. Your broadcast may have swayed some, but not all. This conflict is not over, merely entering a new phase." "A conflict of ideas, rather than weapons," Darian suggested, stepping into view of the transmission. "For now," Corin agreed grimly. "But ideas have a way of finding expression through weapons, eventually." His gaze returned to Syrixa. "The Council has authorized me to formally designate the Peace Station as an official diplomatic outpost of both the Vorak hegemony and the Human Colonial Alliance. Its status is now protected under interspecies law." Syrixa bowed her head in acknowledgement. "Thank you, General." A ghost of a smile touched Corin's lips. "Don't thank me yet. Cultural pioneer, you've just become the most controversial figure in Vorak society since the Reformation Wars. Half my people view you as a visionary, the other half as a heretic." He glanced at Darian. "The same likely applies to you, Ambassador Hale. Your path forward will not be easy." "Few worthwhile paths are," Darian replied. Corin nodded once, then terminated the transmission. The garden dome was silent for a long moment as everyone processed what had just occurred. Then Mara stepped forward, facing Syrixa directly. "I have decided what to call you," she announced formally. Syrixa raised an eyebrow, waiting. "Pathfinder," Mara said simply. One who discovers new routes where none existed before. She hesitated, then added, I request permission to remain assigned to the peace station. I find I have questions that cannot be answered on Aretas. A slow smile spread across Sirixa's face. Permission granted, Ambassador Mara. Questions are welcome here. As the adrenaline of the confrontation faded, the remaining staff began the process of recalling the evacuees and assessing whether Thrawn's aborted attack had caused any damage to the station systems. Sirixa and Darien found themselves alone in a quiet corner of the garden dome. You knew this would happen eventually, Darien observed. That Thran, or someone like him, would try to destroy what we've built. Yes, Sirixa admitted. The Vorak do not change easily, as I said. For many, what we represent is not evolution but contamination. She looked around at the garden, at the fusion of Vorak and human design. But now they've seen an alternative. They've heard the argument for connection over conquest. Some will listen. And the others will fight to preserve what they know, what they believe is right. She took his hand in hers. As would you, if our positions were reversed. Change is frightening, especially change that challenges one's entire worldview. Darien squeezed her hand gently. So what happens now? Sirixa gazed up through the transparent dome at the Tharsis sky, its reddish hue deepening as the sun began to set. Now, we continue building, demonstrating, proving through creation rather than argumentation that there is strength in connection. A small smile touched her lips. And perhaps, eventually, even Thrawn will see what I have seen. That love is strength? Darien asked, echoing the phrase that had begun Sirixa's journey. That love is the greatest strength of all, she corrected, turning to face him fully. Strong enough to overcome centuries of conditioning, strong enough to bridge the gap between species, strong enough to create something new from the ashes of conflict. As they stood together in the garden they had designed, surrounded by the life they had nurtured, Sirixa reflected on the long, painful journey that had brought her here. From the mockery of her fellow warriors to the crisis of faith in her own identity, from the terror of defection to the triumph of creation. She had lost her rank, her people, her place in the world she had known, and gained something she had once thought impossible. If they once laughed at me for dreaming, she murmured, now I live in that dream. The pink skies of Tharsis stretched endlessly above them, a canvas for possibilities neither the Vorak nor humans had imagined before. And in the quiet garden beneath those skies, a warrior who had dared to love and a scientist who had dared to defend stood together, their joined hands a bridge between worlds stronger than any space station could ever be. 3 months after Thrawn's attempted attack, the peace station had expanded beyond its original design. New modules extended from the central hub, each representing another aspect of Vorak-human cooperation. A medical research facility exploring the physiological differences between the species. An artistic exchange center, where cultural traditions were shared and reinterpreted. And expanded agricultural domes, testing crops that could thrive on both Tharsis and Aretas. Sirixa stood in the newest addition, a memorial garden dedicated to those who had fallen in the conflicts between their peoples. Unlike the other gardens, this one featured no Tharsis plants or Vorak engineering marvels. Instead, simple stone markers bore the names of battles, ships, colonies, and worlds that had been lost. No individual names. That would have required millions of markers. But the acknowledgement of shared pain was itself a kind of healing. She heard footsteps approaching, too light to be Darien's. Turning, she found Ambassador Mara observing her quietly. The memorial was your idea, Mara stated, rather than asked. Sirixa nodded. We cannot build a future together by forgetting the past. The pain, the loss, they are part of who we are, who we will become. Mara studied the simple stone markers, her expression thoughtful. On Aretas, We commemorate victories, not losses. The dead are honored for their sacrifice to the hegemony, but we do not dwell on defeat. Because defeat is weakness? Sirixa suggested. Yes, Mara frowned slightly. Yet here you display both Vorak and human losses equally, as if both matter. They do, Sirixa said simply. Pain is universal. Mara, grief knows no species. When we recognize that shared experience, we begin to see each other not as alien, but as kin in suffering. Mara was silent for a long moment, absorbing this concept. Finally, she said, I have been studying human emotional expressions, their literature, art, music. It is chaotic, undisciplined, but there is a pattern beneath the disorder, a logic to their emotional languages that I had not expected. And what have you learned from this study? Sirixa asked, genuinely curious. Mara had been among the most traditional of the Vorak ambassadors, adhering strictly to military protocols and keeping her distance from the human staff. That I understand very little, Mara admitted with surprising candor. But I wish to understand more. Sirixa smiled. That is how it begins. Before Mara could respond, the station's communication system activated. Sirixa! Mara! Please report to the command center immediately, came Kalux's voice, tension evident in his tone. They arrived to find Darien and Kalux studying a holographic display of the Tharsis system. A large red marker indicated an unidentified vessel approaching from the outer system. Scans confirm it's a Vorak ship, Kalux reported, but not military configuration. Civilian transport, heavily modified. Identity codes, Mara asked. None transmitted, Kalux replied, and they're not responding to hails. Sirixa frowned. Course and speed. Direct approach to the station at standard velocity. No evasive maneuvers. No aggressive posturing. Could be smugglers, Mara suggested. Or pirates using a stolen Vorak hull. Or Thran's supporters, testing our defenses, Darien added grimly. Sirixa studied the holographic representation of the approaching vessel. Something about its configuration seemed familiar, though she couldn't immediately place it. Continue hailing them. Alert Tharsis colony security as a precaution. But no aggressive actions unless they demonstrate hostile intent. The ship continued its approach, maintaining its course directly toward the peace station. As it drew closer, more detailed scans became possible. Life signs confirm Vorak biosignatures, Kalux reported. Approximately 30 individuals. Armaments? Sirixa asked. Minimal. Standard point defense systems only. No military-grade weapons detected. The tension in the command center eased slightly at this news, though everyone remained alert. A civilian Vorak vessel this far from hegemony space was unusual enough to warrant caution. Wait, Kalux said suddenly, focusing on a new data point. I'm detecting non-Vorak life signs as well. Human readings, and something else. Biological patterns I don't recognize. Captives, Mara suggested darkly. Impossible to determine from this distance, Kalux admitted. Sirixa made a decision. Prepare Docking Bay 3 for their arrival. Security protocols at maximum, but no visible weapons. I don't want to provoke a confrontation if it can be avoided. You're going to let them dock? Mara asked incredulously. Without identification or clearance? If they wanted to attack us, a direct approach at standard velocity would be suicide, Sirixa pointed out. Whatever their purpose, I doubt it's military. As the mysterious vessel drew nearer, its communication system finally activated. Peace Station. This is the Independent Transport New Horizon, requesting emergency docking permission. Repeat, emergency docking. Sirixa froze, recognition dawning. That voice. Identity yourself, she demanded. A pause. Then, this is Vorax, formerly General Vorax of the Vorak hegemony. I come seeking asylum. The command center erupted in shocked murmurs. General Vorax had been one of Sirixa's most vocal critics. second only to Thran in his condemnation of her betrayal of Vorak values. "Explain your emergency," Syrixa replied, keeping her voice neutral despite her surprise. "We have wounded aboard, humans, and others rescued from a research facility in the outer system. Medical needs beyond our capabilities." Syrixa looked to Darian, who nodded. "Our medical facilities can handle Vorak and human patients," he confirmed. "The others would depend on their physiology." "Docking permission granted," Syrixa decided. "Medical teams will meet you in Bay 3. She switched off the communication and turned to the others. "Kalux, coordinate with security. Full bioscans of everyone who disembarks, but maintain non-threatening posture. Mara, alert the medical staff about incoming casualties. Darian, you're with me." As they hurried toward Docking Bay 3, Darian matched his pace to Syrixa's longer stride. "Vorak seeking asylum. After everything he said about you?" "Former General Vorax, apparently," Syrixa corrected. "And with humans aboard his vessel? Something significant has happened." When they arrived at the docking bay, the New Horizon was just completing its attachment to the station's systems. The vessel showed signs of hasty modifications and recent damage. Scorch marks along one side suggested it had come under fire at some point in its journey. The airlock cycled, and the first figures emerged. Vorak medical personnel carrying stretchers with human patients. Behind them came Vorax himself, his once pristine military bearing now replaced with the weathered look of a civilian who had seen too much in too short a time. He spotted Syrixa and approached, giving a formal Vorax salute despite his civilian clothing. "Cultural pioneer," he greeted her, using her official title with no trace of the contempt he had once shown. "Thank you for receiving us without question." "Save your thanks until your wounded are treated," Syrixa replied. "Then we will have questions. Former General." Vorax nodded wearily. "And I will answer them. But first." He gestured behind him, where more stretchers were emerging from the airlock. On these lay beings neither human nor Vorak, slender, with iridescent skin in shades of blue and green. Their anatomical structure similar to both species, yet distinctly different. "The Akathi," Vorax explained. "A newly discovered sentient species from the Cygnus Reach. They were being held at a research facility funded by elements within both the Vorak military and human corporations." Darian moved closer to examine the injured Akathi, his xenobiologist training evident in his careful, respectful assessment. "These wounds, some are surgical, others from energy weapons." "Yes," Vorax confirmed grimly. "When we liberated them, the facility's security forces resisted. And before that, the researchers." He trailed off, jaw tightening. "There will be time for full explanations later. For now, they need medical attention. Their physiology is similar enough to ours that standard treatments should be effective. But they have some unique requirements. I've transferred all the data we have to your medical system." Syrixa signaled the medical teams forward, and they began moving the wounded Akathi and humans toward the station's treatment facilities. Only when the last patient had been transported did she turn back to Vorax. "You said you seek asylum," she reminded him. "From whom?" Vorax's expression darkened. "From everyone. The hegemony. For my desertion. The human alliance. For my past actions against their colonies. And from those who would silence what I've discovered. A conspiracy that spans both our species. Cultural pioneer. One that makes our past conflicts seem like children's games." "We should continue this conversation somewhere more private," Syrixa suggested, noting the open nature of the docking bay and the many ears, both Vorak and human, within hearing range. Vorax nodded in agreement, and they proceeded to a secure conference room adjacent to the command center. Once the door sealed behind them, Syrixa faced the former general directly. "Now explain everything." Vorax sank into a chair. the weight of recent events evident in his posture. It began 3 months ago, after Thran's attempt to destroy this station. The council was divided on how to respond to his actions. Some wanted him court-martialed for disobeying orders. Others, myself included, sympathized with his motives if not his methods. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Thran approached me privately, claiming he had discovered evidence of human corruption infiltrating the highest levels of Vorak leadership. He believed General Korin and others had been compromised, not through emotional connection as with you, but through more insidious means. What means? Darian asked. Technology, biological manipulation, mind control. Essentially, Vorax's expression showed his initial skepticism. I thought his claims extreme, but he offered to show me proof, a secret research facility in the Cygnus Reach, where these methods were being developed and tested. So you went with him, Syrixa concluded. Yes. What I found was not what either of us expected. Vorax straightened in his chair. The facility existed, but it wasn't developing mind control technology for humans to use against Vorak. It was a joint operation, rogue elements from both species, working together to develop control methods that could be used against both our peoples. And they were using a third species as test subjects. The Akathi, Darian said. Vorax nodded. A peaceful, technologically advanced civilization from a system in the Cygnus Reach. They had been in contact with human colonies for several years, but the hegemony was unaware of their existence. The researchers were using them to develop a neural interface that could override conscious will, while leaving the subject's skills and knowledge intact. The perfect slave, Syrixa observed grimly. The perfect weapon, Vorax corrected. Imagine soldiers with all their training and abilities, but no free will, no fear, no questioning of orders. He shook his head. When we discovered the truth, Thran changed. He couldn't accept that Vorak would collaborate with humans for any purpose, even one as aligned with domination as this. He convinced himself that the entire operation must be human-led, with the Vorak participants as unwitting pawns or early victims of the control technology. And you? Darian asked. I saw the evidence with my own eyes. The facility directors included both species. The funding came from both sides. This wasn't human corruption or Vorak extremism. It was something new and terrible. A collaboration based not on connection, as you've built here, but on the shared desire for absolute control. Syrixa's mind raced, connecting this revelation to other patterns she had observed. What happened at the facility? How did you end up here with wounded Akathi and humans? Vorax's expression darkened further. Thran lost his reason. He wanted to destroy the facility, kill everyone inside, researchers, subjects, everyone, to eliminate what he saw as human contamination. I disagreed. We fought. My loyalty to Vorak principles has always been absolute. But this, he gestured helplessly. This was not the Vorak way, not the honorable path. So you turned against Thran, Syrixa said softly, understanding dawning. You, who once called me traitor for questioning our culture's rejection of emotion. Ironic, isn't it? Vorax admitted with a humorless laugh. I freed the test subjects while Thran was setting the facility's self-destruct systems. We barely escaped before the explosion. Thran presumed me dead in the blast, which has given us some advantage in staying ahead of pursuit. Pursuit? Darian asked sharply. The conspiracy extends further than that single facility, Vorax confirmed. We've been tracked across 3 systems by ships that don't match any known military registry, neither Vorak nor human. They're well-armed and persistent. And you came here, Syrixa observed, to the very station you once condemned as an abomination. Vorax met her gaze directly. Because you were right, cultural pioneer. Not about everything. I still believe in Vorak's strength, Vorak discipline. But you were right that there is strength in connection, in understanding the other, in questioning what we are taught. He gestured toward the medical bay, where the Akathi were being treated. And because I knew you would help them, regardless of species or origin. Because this station stands for something that might be our only hope against what I've discovered. Sarixa was silent for a long moment, absorbing the implications of Vorax's revelation. A conspiracy spanning both species, developing technology to control minds. A third sentient species, previously unknown to the Vorak. And Thran, driven to greater extremes by his inability to accept collaboration between humans and Vorak, even for destructive purposes. The Akathi, she said finally. Once they've recovered, they may provide valuable information about this conspiracy. And, as a new species, their perspective on Vorak-human relations could be illuminating. If they're willing to trust either of us after what was done to them, Darian pointed out. A valid concern, Vorax agreed. But the Akathi philosophy emphasizes understanding over retribution. From what I've learned, they may be more willing to cooperate than we deserve. Sarixa made her decision. You and your people will receive asylum here, former general. The wounded will be treated, and we will investigate your claims about this conspiracy. But, she fixed him with a stern gaze, you will submit to full security protocols. Your history gives us reason for caution. Vorax bowed his head in acceptance. I expected nothing less. My days of commanding are over. Cultural pioneer. I come as a supplicant, seeking not just protection, but understanding. Understanding is what we offer here, Sarixa replied, along with something you once mocked, the chance to grow beyond what you were taught to be. A ghost of a smile touched Vorax's lips. It seems I have much to learn from the one I once called traitor. As Vorax was escorted to temporary quarters, Sarixa and Darian remained in the conference room, processing the implications of what they had learned. If what he says is true, Darian began, this conspiracy represents a threat greater than any conflict between our species. Yes, Sarixa agreed. And it suggests something I have long suspected, that the divisions between Vorak and human are not as fundamental as either side believes. If rogue elements from both species can collaborate for domination, then cooperation for creation, as we have built here, is even more vital. Do you trust him? Darian asked quietly. Sarixa considered the question carefully. Trust is earned, not given. But I believe his account. The Vorax I knew would never have lowered himself to seek asylum from me unless the alternative was truly worse. She smiled slightly. And there is a certain poetic justice in his journey from my accuser to my supplicant. Darian stepped closer, taking her hand in his. This changes everything. A third sentient species. A cross-species conspiracy. Thran more radicalized than ever. Yes, Sarixa agreed. But it also confirms what we've built here. The peace station isn't just a symbol anymore. It's a necessity. A model for the kind of cooperation that may be our only defense against those who would use connection for control rather than creation. She gazed out the viewport at the red Tharsis sky, thinking of all that had transpired since she first dared to suggest that emotion might be strength. The mockery, the betrayal, the loss, the discovery, the creation. And now, a new chapter beginning with the arrival of the Akathi and the revelation of a darker collaboration between their species. They once laughed at me for dreaming, she murmured, echoing her earlier thought. Now we must dream bigger than ever. Darian squeezed her hand. Together. Sarixa smiled, the scars on her face crinkling with the expression that had once been foreign to her warrior discipline. Together, she agreed. As it should be. In the medical bay, the first of the Akathi were beginning to regain consciousness, their iridescent skin shifting colors with their emotions. Soon, They would add their voices, their perspectives, their dreams to the collaboration being built within the peace station's walls. Another bridge between species, another challenge to old certainties, another opportunity to prove that understanding could triumph over domination. And far beyond, in the darkness between stars, Thran plotted his next move, convinced more than ever that the contamination of Vorak purity must be stopped at any cost. The conspiracy Vorax had discovered continued its work, developing tools of control rather than connection. The conflict was far from over. But within the peace station, something new continued to grow. Not just plants and modified Vorak containment systems, but ideas, relationships, possibilities. A garden of a different kind, tended by those who had chosen to believe that love was not weakness but the greatest strength of all. As the pink light of Tharsis' sunset filtered through the station's viewports, Syrixa and Darien walked hand in hand through the memorial garden, adding a new stone marker, one commemorating not a battle or a loss, but a beginning. The marker read simply, "The Akathi, First Contact, Peace Station, a new chapter." It was perhaps the first of many such markers to come. Not an end to conflict, but a new way of facing it, together.